I never thought a simple gate on my own property would turn into a war. But when you live in an HOA neighborhood and a woman like Karen is on the board, you learn fast that nothing is ever simple. She sued me over my gate, and what happened next shocked everyone, including her. Story begins, rewritten with hooks, emotions, and flow. At first, I thought it was just another petty complaint. Karen had always been the type of person who wanted control over every little thing. If your grass was too tall, she left a note. If your trash can was out an hour too long, she sent a picture to the HOA group chat. So, when she came after my gate, I thought, here we go again. But this time, she took it further than I could ever imagine. You see, the gate wasn't fancy. It wasn't gold-plated or towering like a castle door. It was just a simple wooden gate I installed to give my family a little privacy. It matched the style of the neighborhood and didn't block anyone's view. Honestly, most people told me it looked nice. But Karen, she said it was illegal under HOA rules. At first, I laughed. Illegal? A gate? Come on. But she wasn't joking. She actually filed an official complaint. Then, she slapped me with a lawsuit. She claimed my gate ruined the uniformity of the neighborhood and decreased property values. Can you believe that? One wooden gate suddenly lowered the value of every house on the street? It was ridiculous. But here's the thing about Karen, she thrived on conflict. She lived for the drama. And she thought suing me would scare me into backing down. She thought I'd fold under the pressure. But she had no idea who she was dealing with. Hook, what she didn't know was that her obsession with controlling others would lead me straight to her biggest weakness, the one thing that would change everything. The day I got the lawsuit papers, I felt that sting of anger in my chest. You know that moment when you feel cornered, but instead of running, you decide to fight? That's exactly what I felt. I promised myself I wouldn't let her bully me. Not this time. So, I started digging. I wanted to know everything about the HOA rules. If she claimed I broke one, I needed to see the proof. I got the documents, I read every single line, and guess what? There was no specific rule against gates like mine. There were rules about fences, paint colors, and yard decorations, but nothing about a gate like the one I built. That meant Karen was bluffing. She was twisting the rules to suit her own personal war against me. And the more I read, the angrier I got. She wasn't protecting the neighborhood, she was abusing her power. I decided to fight back, not just in court, but in every legal way I could. That's when I stumbled upon something that made me stop in my tracks. While reviewing property records and HOA filings, I noticed something strange about Karen's own property deed. At first, I didn't understand it. But after talking to a friend who works in real estate, it all became clear. Her deed had issues. Big ones. You know that saying, don't throw stones if you live in a glass house? Well, Karen was throwing boulders, and her entire house was glass. Strong hook. What if I told you the very woman who sued me over my gate didn't even properly own the land her house sat on? That's right. Her deed was incomplete, and due to an oversight, there was a loophole. It meant her property could be bought right out from under her if the right steps were taken. And when I realized that, I knew exactly what I had to do. Now, let me pause here. I want you to feel what I felt in that moment. Imagine the person who made your life miserable, who tried to humiliate you, who dragged your family into unnecessary stress. Then imagine finding out that they built their entire empire on quicksand. That's how I felt. A rush of power, relief, and, honestly, a bit of sweet revenge. I filed the necessary paperwork. I went through the legal process. And slowly, step by step, I worked toward buying her deed. Every time she threw another threat at me, every time she smirked at me during HOA meetings, I kept that secret close to my chest. She had no idea what was coming. Karen's lawsuit against me dragged on for weeks. She showed up to court with piles of papers and a smug grin. She acted like she already won. But my lawyer poked holes in every single one of her arguments. We showed the judge the HOA documents, and it was clear, there was no rule against my gate. Her case was weak. But the best part, the moment she thought she had beaten me, I pulled out the trump card. You should have seen her face when she got the notice. I had legally purchased her property deed. She no longer had the power she thought she did. The queen of the HOA, the self-proclaimed ruler of the neighborhood, had lost her throne. Emotional turn. And let me be clear, I didn't do this just for revenge. I did it because people like Karen make life miserable for everyone else. She wasn't protecting the community, she was dividing it. She wasn't upholding values, she was crushing people's spirits. And when you let people like that get away with it, they only grow stronger. So yes, I fought back. Yes, I turned the tables. And yes, it felt good. But more than that, it showed everyone that you don't have to bow down to bullies, even if they hide behind fancy titles or HOA rules. Hooked to Section 2, but here's the thing, owning Karen's deed was just the beginning. What happened next would shake the entire HOA to its core, and it would test me in ways I didn't expect. Because when you take power away from someone who lives for control, they don't go down without a fight. If you've ever dealt with a Karen, or if you've ever been pushed around by an HOA, stick with me. The story is about to get even crazier, and you won't believe what happened when I held Karen's future in my hands. Owning Karen's deed should have been the end of the story. In my mind, it was checkmate. She tried to use the HOA rules against me, and I had taken away the very ground she stood on. But if you think someone like Karen accepts defeat quietly, you don't know her. The moment she learned I had purchased her property deed, she went wild. I'll never forget the day she stormed into the HOA meeting. Her face was red, her voice sharp, and she accused me of everything from fraud to ruining her life. She said I tricked her, that I used unfair tactics, and that the neighborhood should turn against me. But the truth was simple. Everything I did was legal. Every step I took was documented. She had built her power on intimidation and fear, while I built mine on facts and persistence. And the community. They were watching closely. Hook, this wasn't just a fight between me and Karen anymore. It had become a symbol of what happens when ordinary people stand up to bullies who think they can control everything. At first, some neighbors were nervous. They whispered about what this meant. If he owns her deed, does he own her house? What happens to Karen now? Will she lose her home? The uncertainty spread like wildfire. Karen used that fear to her advantage. She went door to door, telling people I was dangerous, that I wanted to kick her out on the street, that I was planning to take over the HOA for myself. But here's the truth, I didn't want her house. I didn't want to own her life. I just wanted her to stop. Stop controlling people. Stop twisting rules. Stop ruining lives with lawsuits and threats. Still, the drama wasn't over. Karen decided if she couldn't beat me with HOA rules, she would try to destroy me with lies. She filed new complaints, accused me of harassment, even called the city to say my gate was unsafe. None of it worked. Each time, the truth came out, and each time she looked weaker. Emotional build-up. But you know what really shook her? The neighbors she once controlled stopped listening to her. People who used to nod in fear when she spoke started rolling their eyes. They realized they didn't have to bow down to her anymore. My fight gave them courage. And Karen, she hated that more than anything. It reminded me of a playground bully who suddenly gets stood up to. At first, they yell louder, but once they realize nobody's scared anymore, they start to crumble. That's what I saw happening to Karen. But there was still one last storm before the calm. One night, I got a knock on my door. It was Karen. She looked different, less confident, almost desperate. She asked to talk. At first, I didn't want to let her in. After everything she had put me through, why should I give her more of my time? But something in her eyes told me this wasn't about another fight. This was about surrender. She sat at my table and admitted it. She was wrong. She confessed that the lawsuit wasn't about the gate, it was about control. She hated seeing anyone do something without her approval. She said the HOA had been her way of feeling powerful in a life where she often felt powerless. And then, her voice cracked. She told me she was afraid of losing everything. For a moment, I saw past the HOA Karen everyone knew. I saw a human being who was scared and lonely. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't about to forgive everything she did. But in that moment, I realized something powerful. Sometimes the loudest bullies are the most broken inside. Hook twist, and here's the part you might not expect. I didn't kick Karen out. I didn't use her deed to destroy her. I used it to set boundaries, to make sure she could never abuse her power again. We worked out an agreement. She stayed in her home, but she stepped down from the HOA board. She gave up her vote on community decisions. And most importantly, she signed a legal agreement that she would never again file complaints or lawsuits over personal grudges. Was it mercy? Maybe. Was it strategy? Definitely. Because taking her house would have made me look like the villain. But showing her and everyone else that I had the power but chose not to abuse it, that changed everything. The bigger picture. From that day on, the neighborhood was different. The HOA meetings weren't full of fear and finger-pointing anymore. People actually smiled. We talked about real improvements, better lighting, safer playgrounds, community events. The focus shifted from punishment to progress. And Karen, she kept to herself. Every now and then, I'd see her outside, and she'd give me a small nod. Not a smile, not a wave, but a nod of respect. It was her way of saying, "You won, but thank you for not destroying me." Emotional reflection. Looking back, I realized this fight wasn't just about a gate. It was about standing up to control, to fear, to people who think rules give them the right to crush others. It was about showing that justice doesn't always come from anger. It sometimes comes from restraint. I learned that revenge feels good for a moment, but balance lasts longer. And most of all, I learned that sometimes the best way to beat a bully is not to become one yourself. Final hook before CTA. So, the next time someone tries to control you, the next time a Karen comes after you with rules, threats, or lawsuits, remember this: power isn't about shouting the loudest. Power is about standing firm, knowing your rights, and refusing to let fear win. If this story inspired you, share it. If you've ever dealt with a Karen or an unfair HOA, drop your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned, because I have more real stories of standing up to bullies that you won't want to miss.